knew good storytelling was all about the details. There was once a tavern on the edge of town called the Dog's Head, owned by a woman named Aurora Clark, she began, the same way she always began the tale of her great-great-aunt. It was named for the taxidermy dog's head mounted above the bar. She told everyone who asked that she had killed it herself after it attacked her. "Ripped it open from its belly to its chin with this knife right here," she'd say, fingering the one she always wore around her neck. Though that wasn't the truth. The dog had been her beloved pet when she was a girl, a German shepherd named Prince, who followed her everywhere until the day she passed from old age. She couldn't stand the thought of burying him, abandoning him in the ground forever, especially those big, shiny black eyes that had looked at her with so much love. And besides, the head and the story she told about it served a purpose. It wasn't easy being a young woman running a tavern all on her own. As long as everyone believed it was the truth, it gave her flinty stare some weight, and her words extra force when she told her rowdiest customers it was time to go home. Perhaps Roxie had inherited some of her own flair for story from Aurora, though it hadn't come without practice. She knew exactly how her voice sounded to her audience, equal parts inviting and ominous. She'd rehearsed the exact words of Aurora's tale over and over, recording herself and playing it back dozens of times, and then dozens more until she stopped sounding rehearsed. She knew where to pause, where to raise her voice, where to whisper, and make her rapt listeners lean in close. Aurora was no stranger to hard times. Her mother had been lost in a fire, and her father had been a mean man, too simple to make a point without using his fists. Living with him had made her harder and meaner herself, like a wild animal, driven through life solely by her need to survive it. It was a blessing when he ran off with a lover and left her alone to run the tavern. Things finally seemed to be looking up for her, until the 18th Amendment came along and banned the production and sale of alcohol, destroying her business in the process. Roxie felt the eyes of the group tracking her every move as she paced along the edge of the water, and she relished their undivided attention. "I won't lose this too," Aurora thought. "Not this. This place is mine." But of course, Roxie had no way of knowing exactly what was running through Aurora's head 100 years ago. All she had to go on was what she'd found at the Whistler Public Library, an old newspaper clipping with just a few sparse lines about the incident. If anyone pressed her about it, she would admit some of the details were her invention, but with a dismissive wave of her hand, like such technicalities hardly mattered. There'd been a grainy, black-and-white photograph of Aurora with the article. She had only been 19 at the time, but she looked much older, worn down. From the moment Roxie saw that photograph, the story came so clearly to her, it was almost as if her great-great-aunt had whispered the whole thing in her eager ear. Maybe it was intuition. Her grandmother had always said she was attuned to people in a way that was beyond explanation. Or maybe it was just that poor Aurora had been a Clark, and her story had always lived dormant in Roxie's blood, waiting for the day she would draw it out. So, against the law, Aurora continued selling alcohol, running her business under the table, or rather under the tavern, through the small cellar window, but only for people who knew just the right knock and could whisper the password. The window would slide open, and impatient